So what is the stress response? Now, I'll keep it simple, okay, because this is really medical. I will keep it simple so I don't lose you. You need to understand how your actions, your thoughts can lead to stress and disease. The stress response begins in the brain. It begins when you perceive an event or a circumstance as toxic and you are unable to overcome. The brain receives that through the senses, your sight, touch, feeling, and hearing. The brain gathers that information and it takes it to an area in the brain that's called the amygdala. So the stimulus gets from the senses, it gets to a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is like an emotional processing center. The amygdala stores information there. And if you are not able to overcome that stressor, that event, the amygdala, that emotional processing center, interprets that stimulus or stimuli as a stressor. And it sends a signal to yet another part of the brain that's called the hypothalamus. I know this is medical, stay with me. You have to understand this. I'm keeping this simple. It gets to the hypothalamus, which is like the command center, which communicates throughout the rest of the body through what is called the autonomic nervous system. Now the hypothalamus, which is like the command center in the body, can be divided into two parts. This is all happening in the brain now. So the stress response begins in the brain. The hypothalamus can be divided into the sympathetic nervous system, which is a fight or flight, you're familiar with this, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which takes care of rest and restoration. If the stressor persists, you're unable to forgive, you're still dealing with fear, anxiety, toxic home or work environment, the body is receiving that as a stressor because God did not create us to handle such poison, toxic in our body. So the body senses that as stress, distress. The sympathetic nervous system now triggers another gland that's called the adrenal gland that sits on top of your kidneys. Once the adrenal gland is triggered, it releases stress hormones, adrenaline. You're familiar with that, right? Adrenaline is poured into the bloodstream. And then you experience what we call physiological symptoms such as increase of heart rate, dilated pupils, tense muscles, you're more alert. Now, short term, this is all good. Because this is how God designed the body so we can deal with acute stress. Remember I mentioned earlier that God has created us with innate ability to overcome. Say, for example, you're driving down the street and you see a little 3-year-old child coming down, not looking, and then you're driving in a hurry, you smash that brake. That is a sympathetic nervous system that you've just activated and adrenaline is released, and so you can act quickly. And then the moment the danger subsides, the parasympathetic nerves helps you to rest and restoration. And then life goes on, right? That's how God designed it. But unfortunately, it's not that way for many of us. Especially the secret cows. We live in fear. We are anxious. We are worried. We have unforgiveness. We're looking at things in the environment. We're listening to the news and it's getting to our senses. Now we are worried. So we have stressors in the body. Now, as we continue to perceive a stress, the body is chronically releasing adrenaline. And then through a cascade of other events, which I don't have time to get into, cortisol is released. So you have high levels of stress hormones circulating in your body. And according to medical research, the outcome of uncontrolled stress hormones circulating in your body is deadly. It leads to increased blood pressure because it causes narrowing of the blood vessels. So blood flow is restricted. There's high blood pressure. There's heart disease, stroke. I'm going to just name you some of the common diseases. Diabetes because there's poor insulin production, high levels of glucose in the blood bloodstream, headaches, arthritis, fibromyalgia, heartburn, anxiety, depression, because high levels of stress hormones will damage the brain neurons. The part of the brain in the limbic system that is supposed to release serotonin and other neurotransmitters to regulate your mood becomes damaged because of high levels of stress hormones. Then you get depressed. And the immune system is negatively affected. And then you are unable to fight common infections. Your thyroid gland, wow, is blown out of whack. Asthma, COPD, these are diseases that I'm sure you're familiar with. Let me ask you, when you experience even acute stress, don't you feel tense in your muscle and you lose your hair? That is how, and that is why. This is not God's will for us.